Hey, business warriors, this is Professor E here with your very first video learning review, the VLRs as they're known by, and we're going to get into chapter 1, starting off with the business. We're going to talk about a little about taking some risks, making profit, just a basic overview of what we're really going to dive into for the rest of this semester. Let's get started. Before I really get into it, this is a slide that I like to show at the end of the semester. It's in one of the chapters that we're going to be doing, the personal finance stuff. And over time, I've come to realize that it's really a good slide to have day one. And so when we start talking about business, this is a great way to kind of say, okay, why am I taking all these classes and why am I in business? What am I trying to get out of this? And this is a great slide. Understanding the business. Self-employed people are 5 times more likely to be millionaires. Okay, millionaires, like they said, tend to have the modest homes. They buy used cars, things like that. And the key here is that millionaires are educated, they work hard, they save money, and they make purchases carefully. Okay, so you're going to see this slide again at the very end of this semester, but I like to bring it up front like, hey, why am I taking all these classes? Because the more you learn about business, the better off you're going to be, and it's going to give you success down the road. But let's get started. So we start talking about business and entrepreneurship. We start looking at, well, what is a business, right? What is it? What's business all about? When we start looking at it, we say, well, it's really any activity that seeks to provide goods and services to others, right? While operating for what? Money, profit. We're trying to make money, okay? So we want to be in business for ourselves so that we can make profit, right? In order to do that, we have to provide a good or service that the customer wants, all right? We start talking about entrepreneurship. Well, what's an entrepreneur? Well, that's the person who takes that risk of money and time in order to start a business, because starting a business is not easy. I'm not gonna sit here and go, yeah, you're in the right class, business 100, basic business, you can rock and roll. This is the basic understanding of what business is. But the idea is that, can you take the foundation you learn here and then grow on that so that you can go out there one day and start your own business and do your own thing. You're going to be an entrepreneur. Anytime you do a lot of planning, you're taking on a risk, you put some money into it, you're an entrepreneur, okay? And not all entrepreneurs are successful at first. They often fail the first couple times before they finally have their successes and stuff like that. So successfully filling a market need, I can't stress that enough, means you could make money for yourself and provide jobs for others. So when we start breaking it down, what's a good and a service? Well, it's pretty simple. A good is nothing more than just a tangible product, a computer, food, clothing, things like that. What is tangible? If we start, I always say know your terms, right? Well, what is tangible? We start thinking it's things I can touch, right? It's a pen. It's something I want to sell. It's a shirt or something like that, okay? When we get into services, those are more intangibles. Those are things we cannot touch, but we still pay for them. Like healthcare is up there. We talk about your education. This is a tangible service you're getting right here by taking a business course. I'm sure maybe you've had your taxes done recently by a tax accountant. That would be an intangible service. It's something that you can't touch, you pay for, and then when you need to use it again, you have to pay for it again. Whereas if I buy a good that's a tangible product, I don't necessarily have to pay for it again once I buy it, right? I can put it back on the shelf. I can take it off the shelf. I can use it again until maybe that good is now finally used up, and then I need an updated product or something like that. Intangible, little different animal. It's a service, and when you use a service, then you have to pay for the service again. Success in business is often based on strategy of finding a need and fulfilling that need. And to be successful in business, the bottom line is you must satisfy a need. If you cannot satisfy a need as a business, you're not in business. It's that simple, right? I should just say, good night, everybody, we're done. No, I mean, there's more to it than that, but the bottom line is the reason people start businesses is because they see a need out there and they figure out a way to fulfill that need. If you can't satisfy a need, you won't make money, you're out of business. Breaking it down, some more terms we're getting into. This chapter is a lot of terms and overview. We're going to get into each of these components as we go along in different VLRs, but this is just kind of an overview. But what is revenue? Okay, so we look at revenue. That's just the total amount of money a business takes in, right? So they have all this revenue coming in, all this money coming in, okay? And then the idea really is what's profit, right? The profit is the amount that they keep, okay? So we can have revenues coming in, but we have expenses going out. Whatever's left over, we can consider as profit, all right? Or, unfortunately, if our expenses are greater than our revenues, well, what do we have then? We have a loss, right? Occurs when a business expenses are more than its revenue, all right? I'm more of a visual kind of person, right? Most people are. So when we look at it, here's revenue. Here's our expenses. What's the difference here? Well, in this case, we have profit, right? And I always say I like to hug my profits, right? I like my money. So we want to make sure we keep our money as much as we can. The idea in business is, how can I make this smaller, right, to make this bigger, right? Or how can I make this bigger so I can make this bigger, right? We want to try to turn this square into a rectangle if we can. That's really the idea in business, right? Of course, if we have more expenses than we do revenues, then what goes right here? Well, unfortunately, we have a loss and a very sad day. We don't want losses, we want profits. More terms we get into, what is a risk, right? So I often would ask you, who took a risk here today, right? Think about it for a second. Have you taken a risk today? I often joke, if you got out of bed, you took a risk, right? The cat was underneath you and you stepped on it, that was a risk, right? For both you and the cat. We talk about what other risks? Did you drive somewhere? Well, if you did, you took on a lot of risks, especially in this area, right? You took this class. That's a risk, right? Hopefully I'm taking this class. I know it's going to be online, right? But I'm gonna be served with these VLRs. Hopefully they're really good so I can get some information out of them. We're always taking risks, okay? Even in business, the chance an entrepreneur takes of losing time and money, right, on a business or a business idea, right, that may not prove profitable. Again, a couple slides ago, I talked about what is entrepreneur, what's entrepreneurship. The idea is that it's someone who takes a risk, right? It's someone who wants to start a business, but when you start a business, you are sacrificing a lot of time. Imagine, if you will, that at the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the end of a year, you realize it's not going to happen, right? That's a lot of wasted time and money then, okay? You're taking on a risk to make this thing work. So we're talking about risks, and we want to figure out how do we minimize our risk to the best of our abilities. Businesses take risk, but with great risk can come great profit. So that's the idea behind that, right? Great risk, great reward. Some other things we start breaking down. Taxes. Well, I always say taxes is a 5-letter bad word, but hey, what are taxes? We all pay taxes, right? What do we use them for? Well, hopefully they all go for our hospitals and our libraries and our schools and things like that. We use it for our fire protection. That's why we pay our taxes, okay? We hope that whoever our government officials that we put in place utilize the revenues that they make off of our taxes and distribute those taxes accordingly so that we can have these nice things around us that protect us and do things for us, okay? Some other terms we get into with your business, we start talking about stakeholders. Well, who are the stakeholders within the business? Well, it's basically all the people who actually, stand to gain or lose from that business, right? Based on the policies we create, the activities that we do within the business, they're going to have some concerns about how the business does, okay? So when we start thinking about it, though, who are the stakeholders within our business? And if you really stop and think about it, the most common answer I usually get from this one is stockholders, because a stakeholder and a stockholder kind of sound the same. That's true. I agree. A stockholder is definitely a stakeholder because they have ownership in the company. Obviously, they're concerned about what's going to happen within the company. Is it going to grow? How is it going to do? The other stakeholders might be that we don't think about would be, my favorite is the customer. The customer is number one, right? Because we want to what? Satisfy a need. In order to satisfy a need, we need what? Customers, right? So the idea is that the customer is probably a big time stakeholder. A lot of times we forget about the employees are a stakeholder. We're going to talk about that as we go along in these VLRs, where we talk about management, morale, leadership, things like that within the organization, because if your employees aren't happy, are they going to do a very good job for you? Probably not, right? So they're a stakeholder as well that we want to make sure we can massage and take care of so that they'll want to do a good job and be productive for us within the business. It talks about the media, your community members. We're going to get into social responsibility and things like that. Your suppliers. They're also a stakeholder. You're going to have supply chain management stuff that you want to deal with in order to keep those relationships on a solid ground too, because your suppliers are looking at you as a customer while you look at them as a supplier. And again, it's a great relationship to have. They want to help you just as much as you want to help them. They want to make money off you too, okay? Some other terms we get into, we start talking about what is outsourcing. Basically, outsourcing is contracting other companies to do some of the things that you don't want to do, is how I look at it, right? So a guy like me, I run my own business. I have a couple businesses that I run, and I don't want to do my taxes anymore. I used to do it early on when I first started the business because it was pretty easy for me, but now I outsource it. I have a tax accountant that I send all my stuff to, and they do it all for me. I do a lot of different research and analysis things, so I have those outsourced to provide me information that I can then process and make the best decisions for what's going to happen within the company. Many different things that you can outsource for. If you're running a t-shirt shop, right? Well, maybe you outsource it to another facility to actually do the t-shirt design and building of the t-shirt and then ship it forward. We'll talk about that as we move along in these VLRs. Insourcing is a great example. They talk about foreign companies operating offices and factories in the United States. IKEA will probably be a good one. I think they're out of the Netherlands or something like that. Obviously, they have one locally here in the U.S. That would be insourcing. They're putting the facility here because they're realizing that they can probably just generate more money that way, okay? A nonprofit organization, a little different animal. We're going to get into, setting up a business and things like that. You can set your business up as a nonprofit. Usually we look at these as organizations whose really their goal is for the betterment of the community. They're really not in it for profit or gains. They're looking to try to raise money, grants, loans, things like that in order to service the community. So their job's a little bit different. Same concept though. They still want to satisfy a need, so they have to go out and find money to keep them afloat so they can use that money for other things, other social programs and things like that. And just to give you some ideas, I'm sure there's a couple up here you already understood. The Salvation Army, I'm sure you've heard of them. The American Red Cross, that's a big one. The Cancer Society is another great one, and so on and so forth. There are many, many different types of nonprofits out there. Getting back to entrepreneurship, though, we're going to start talking about the ups and downs. I kind of started to allude towards it and saying, hey, what are the pluses and minuses? Well, what do you think the best thing about being an entrepreneur could be? Well, the one thing would be that you have the freedom to succeed, right? You have the ability to take measures into your own hands. You're starting your own business, right? We're going to talk, we talk about what motivates us to run a business. Is it for money? Is it for security? Is it for advancement? Things like that. If you are someone who says, I'm doing it for the challenge, then you're probably got that motivation to really go out there, get up every morning and drive to get that business going. So how big can this business get? As big as you want. How hard do you want to work, right? You get to make your own decisions. You get to be your own person, right? Who likes that idea? High five, right? So you can self-high five yourself and say, hey, I'm in business for myself. I'm an owner, okay? Can you make money off of it and make some wealth? Absolutely. Most people, that's why they do start the business, okay? Then you can start hiring your own staff. We're going to talk about that in these VLRs where we get into the invisible hand theory, where you bring on other people and help their lives out. By they be productive for you, and then in turn, you're giving them money so they can help themselves within the community. It's a whole thing. Knowing the ups, what is the downside of being an entrepreneur? Well, the big one is if you have the freedom to succeed, well, you have the freedom to fail as well, right? So I can fail the business as easy as I can be successful, okay? Maybe I'm not working that hard. I will strive. You'll hear me say a lot in these VLRs that you must have a business plan. You got to design a business plan. You have to sit down and think through the problems that may occur within the business and write them down so you have solutions. So when they happen, you go, I had a plan for that, okay? A lot of businesses that fail don't have a business plan. They haven't thought it through, right? So when they hit those obstacles very quickly, they look at it and they panic and they go, we don't know what to do, and it's coming at them too fast, and a lot of times they fail from that, okay? No paid vacations. That's true. Nope. I've been in business for almost 20 years. I haven't had a paid vacation yet. Okay. I've gone on vacation, but I'm usually still working, right? So the idea is that, of course, I don't think of it as work because I enjoy what I do. That's another thing. Hopefully you get into something that you enjoy, right? But there is no paid vacations. There is no health insurance, right? A guy like me, if I have to go get health insurance, then I have to kind of pay a little bit more than the normal person because you're your own business owner. There are different resources out there these days that will help you with that, but Yeah, no real health insurance and no daycare. Nope, no daycare. Nothing's gonna be paid for there. You're all on your own, so you got to figure that out. We get into today's dynamic business environment. This one's kind of an eye chart. I apologize. It's kind of tough to see, so I kind of blew it up a little bit for you. But basically, these are all the things that we have for the business right here. These are all the things around us as a business that impact us that we cannot control. This is the key. You cannot control it, but you must monitor it. You got to keep track of this kind of stuff. And over here we have the economics, the economy, right? So we start looking at what are the laws that are being developed? What is the trade currency looking like if we're doing stuff overseas possibly? What are the taxes and regulations that they've come up with? In today's environment with everything that's going on, what's the economy like? Yeah, exactly. It's not doing too hot. And a lot of businesses, many businesses right now are trying to figure out how to shift gears and how to get ready for maybe the new norm that's coming around the corner, right? So they're trying to figure things out because the economy is kind of shaky at this point. So they're trying to figure out how are we going to come out of this stuff. Okay. And if you think about it, the government is trying to help small business owners. So that's a good thing. We want to kind of keep them afloat till we kind of get through what's going on in today's world. Until we can get through that, then we can get these businesses up and running again. We can get the economy going again. Competition, always monitor your competition. What are they doing, right? The social environment, right? We're going to break this down. We'll get into it around VLR 13, 14, where we start talking about target market analysis, right? If you have a good or service that you want to sell or create awareness to, who is that target market? Who is that customer that we want to get it to? So we're going to look at different diversity and demographic changes and things like that. So you want to pay attention to the social environment. And then last but not least, but your tech environment, right? Technology. We start looking at different databases, what's out there these days, what software programs make you more efficient, because we want to be efficient. The more efficient and effective we can be, the more productivity we can create faster, and the more profits you can gain from that, okay? So you're always looking at technology. The big four here. The government's role in business, we start looking at the government can promote business by minimizing spending if they can. That's the big thing for small businesses, right? They want to try to minimize as much spending as they can to help these small businesses really grow. They allow for private ownership. That's really nice too, right? Minimizing references, interference with the free exchange of goods and services. They really don't want to get involved too much, especially in the United States. They want to take care of the small business owners, but they really don't want to try to get involved. They do pass laws that enable business people to write enforceable contracts. We'll have a whole VLR where we talk about contracts and what are the 6 steps in the contracts and stuff like that. They establish a currency that's tradable in the world. And my favorite is they minimize corruption. I hope so, at least, right? That says it on the slide. So let's hope that the government's minimizing corruption as much as we can. Some other terms to get into, technology, everything from phones to copiers to apps to software programs to make business more effective, more efficient, therefore you're more productive, okay? Interesting because usually the students that I teach this to, they know about technology probably better than I do. And I think myself as a tech guru too. I keep up on this stuff a lot. And I do a lot of things so that I can be more efficient. Because in order to be efficient and effective, just like up here, I can producing the desired results. I want to be effective, but I want to be quick about being effective. So I want to be efficient in doing those things. Okay. The more efficiency, the more balance I have between efficiency and effectiveness, the more productivity I'm going to generate then. The amount of output that generates a given amount of input. Okay. So the hours I put in, right? So if I can reduce the amount of hours and get the maximum productivity, then I'm being very efficient and very effective and I'm doing really well. We break it down into more terms. What is commerce? Well, commerce is basically doing business, right? Buying and selling of goods and services. But here we're talking about e-commerce. So what do you think e-commerce is? The buying and selling of goods and services online, right? Exactly. Online, on the internet. So, and then we break down terms. I've hoped you've heard before B2C and B2B. So what is B2C? Well, that's business to consumer. While B2B is business to business. So where do you see stuff like that? Well, this is too easy, right? Amazon. Amazon is an e-commerce platform where I'm sure everyone out there has got their Prime membership. Self high five, right? So you go to Prime, you can buy something, it comes the next day. That's why we like it so much, right? You're like, this is fantastic, okay? That's e-commerce. That would be a B2C. Does Amazon provide a B2B? It could, absolutely, right? We could go online as a business owner and buy things in bulk on Amazon, right? And that would be a B2B transaction possibly. Okay, so B2C and B2B are pretty easy. Using empowerment to compete in today's market. This is classic right here, right? Customers want quality products, goods at a good price with excellent customer service. True or false? Who out there wants a good product at a fair price, right? Raise a hand. Everyone does, okay? So as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, we want to provide that. We're going to try to figure out what's the best price point that we can provide so that we can make money and the customer's very happy about it. We'll get into that. There'll be VLRs where we talk about pricing strategies and things like that. Because businesses is more customer driven these days, that makes sense, right? Some managers give frontline employees more decision making power, or what we call empowerment, right? Giving the frontline workers the responsibility, the authority, and the freedom to respond quickly to the customer's needs. A great example is restaurants, right? I mean, if you're out there, you've been working at a restaurant and you're a waiter or waitress. I mean, if I'm a customer and you come to me and you tell me what the products are, what's today's specials, and I say, can I get iced tea with that? Of course I can, right? If it comes with rice and I say, no, I'm not into rice, I was hoping you could do the cauliflower breakup, right? And bring it to me. Can you do that? Well, hopefully they say yes. They have the empowerment because they've been given that to say, hey, whatever the customer really wants to adjust on that plate, let's make it happen, okay? Because if they say, well, I have to go ask, I mean, we're back to efficiency and effectiveness and productivity, right? We don't want to slow that down. So they do like to empower the frontline workers to make those decisions quickly for the customer. You're going to see this when you start doing your case studies because it's coming up, okay? Some other factoids as we kind of downshift now. We're going to get into some facts here for you guys, but protect yourself from identity theft. Hopefully you've never had to experience identity theft, but some of the things you should really be thinking about right now is your social security number. I often tell students these days that if you haven't memorized your social security number, it's a homework assignment. You should memorize your social security number. You will always need your social security number at some point in your life. You might as well memorize it now. It's good to know, okay? Make sure you shred your documents. Hopefully you do that out there. I know this is tough because depending on where you are, if you're just a college student right now, you're like, shred my documents. But as you start to get out in the real world and then you start to go into, executive positions and stuff like that, you're going to want to think about these things because you don't want this information to be taken. Don't give out personal information unless you know who you're dealing with. Hopefully that makes common sense. Use strong passwords. I like to ask the students, how many have just one password for everything? And usually I see a bunch of hands go up and I look at them like, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I hope the password's not password, right? So so hopefully you're not using the word password. Hopefully you're using something that's a lot more sophisticated. These days it's great because usually to get online now, they ask that you not only have a strong password, but then they say, can we send you a text with a number? And then you now have to use a number to get in securely into banking or something like that, which I think is great. Okay, it's a little extra step, takes a little bit longer, but I'd rather have the extra security and stuff like that. But use strong passwords, okay? I probably have maybe 8 or 9 different passwords that I keep track of, right, on different things. And I rotate them through different programs when I have to rotate every 90 days or so, okay? So keep that in mind. Never click links, obviously, in suspicious emails. It's funny, it's up here, and you might be watching this and saying, well, duh, right? You would be shocked at how many I see through just Nova themselves or through the college itself where emails come through and it looks just like it came from IT. And it says, click here, we're updating your database within something, and it looks so official. And I know not to click on stuff like that. Matter of fact, I usually just forward it to IT and I will ask them, say, is this legit? But there are a lot of professors out there who be like, click, 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 oh, you want me to do this? Okay, no problem. You got to be careful what you're reading, okay? And monitor your credit report. Make sure you start checking your FICO score and stuff like that. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get into the personal finance. That's towards the end of the semester. I will tell you one quick, great story. I had a client of mine just not too long ago. They were going to sell their home. So they were going to refinance. They're going to sell their home and then buy another home. And they needed probably about $120,000 to do it. They had the money, no big deal. We talked about it as financial planning kind of thing. And, I said, hey, you guys are looking good. This is going to work. The week before closing, he calls me and says, I need to pull out 120 some thousand dollars out of my retirement fund, which is usually odd. You really don't want to do that. So I said, well, what's going on? He says, you won't believe this, but I was supposed to move money from our account to the mortgage people for our down payment on our next home. I go, okay, that makes sense. He goes, we were going to have it at closing and this and that. He goes, I received an email and it told me where I had to go to wire the funds. And so I took the email and I took it to the bank and I put all the money into the wire funds and it was going to a bank in Mexico. And I said, did you not find that odd? He goes, well, I didn't because it's a national mortgage company and they do international stuff. So I just wasn't thinking. I go, okay. So he says, we did the wire funds. Well, turns out it was a phishing email and the email looked exactly like the email that was coming from their actual mortgage person. The only difference was if the girl's name was Kimberly Smith, on the email it said Kimberly Smiths. Otherwise, it said everything else. It had all the dialogue that they had prior to that, except now this person had put the wire information to send money. So they basically sent 120 some thousand dollars to a bank in Mexico. And so he was scrambling because he still had to go to closing. So we had to pull it from the retirement fund. Now, they almost lost everything, right? So the good news to it is the FBI got involved, and within 2 days, I believe it was, they actually tracked down that wire at the Mexican bank. The Mexican bank realized the error, and they actually wired the funds back from that account. So he got his money back, but the point of the story is pay attention to your emails. And I even told him, I said, I can't believe you fell for stuff like that. He even went to the bank. Went to the bank, gave him the thing, gave him the wire instruction. The bank thought nothing of it, and they did it. And so they're getting sophisticated, guys, so be careful what you're out there. It's a great story to fall back on. Some other factoids we get into. We started talking about the U.S. population changes. Population shifts are creating opportunities for some and limiting to others. Diversity has grown from just recruiting minority and female workers. Females workers coming on strong. The growth of single-parent households have encouraged businesses to implement programs such as family leave and flex time. Flex time being the ability to work part-time at work and part-time at home. So they give you that opportunity to say, hey, you can work from 8 to 9:30 before traffic, maybe while traffic's going on, and then come into work. Make sure you're there from 10 to 2. And if you have to leave early, that's fine. Just continue to work at home. That's kind of what flex time means on that. Social Security. Oh, this is a good one, right? Some more factoids. So who will support Social Security? The number of workers per retiree. I'm a trend guy, and this is not a good trend. It's going down. So that means why? Because the idea of Social Security is that when you start looking at different demographics, right? Well, if you think about it, the baby boomers, your grandparents or the baby boomer generation, is a large population, right? And when they were born in, say, the 1940s, okay, as this big bubble goes through life, all right, they were always the big popular demographic for everything. So if you can imagine in the 50s, jeans and clothes were a big popular thing being sold because there's a big population. When they hit the 70s and 80s, houses were big because there's a big population buying houses. If you take that concept now, what's a big population going to start draining on the Social Security? Baby boomers. They want their money now, okay? There's not enough of us dumping into the Social Security program. There's more money coming out. So they're thinking that this thing may start to diminish. I like to show that as a fact because I always say don't count on it. When we get to personal finance on that VLR, we'll reiterate this and then we'll start talking about how you invest your money and stuff like that. Demographics by U.S. by age. This is pretty interesting. Here it is, right? So 45 to 64 is a large population, just as close to 25 to 44. Okay, so we have a large baby boomer population. We start looking at different races. Here in 2005, we have whites that are 67%, the Hispanic Latino 14%, and so on and so forth. But this is what's key, and I like to show this to you because here, 2019, just last year, look how the numbers start to change, right? So we have an increase in the Hispanic Latino market, right? That's interesting. Why? Because as you go out there in the world, if you understand that the market's starting to shift, then you can plan accordingly. Again, remember, we want to minimize that risk. So if we understand what's out there, we can be better prepared for that, okay? And here it is by 2050. If you remember the previous slide, we were around the 60%. It's going down. again, the Hispanic market's going way up. What does that mean? Well, it means I better start learning Spanish, right? If I want to start to hit that target market, it might be good if I know the language, okay? So, embrace it. Embrace the different changes that are happening out there. These are great facts to understand. If you speak Spanish out there, high five, right? You're ahead of the game. You might be something of value or an asset out there now for other organizations to bring you in because they're going to want that. You just need to get the business experience, start getting that education going on. Important changes to the global environment. Obviously, we're getting growth of global competition. Again, this is just factoids. These are things I'm not going to really test you on. I just like to kind of throw mud so you're getting some experience and seeing this stuff. But, is this going to become a global market eventually? Yes. With technology, it's just a matter of time where you have an app and you're a small business owner and you hit the app and the drone comes in, picks up your product and ships it off to South America or something like that. I don't know. It's craziness out there, but we say it and then all of a sudden it happens. So you got to keep track of that stuff. Again, free trade amongst nations. The more free trade we have, the more opportunities we come up. More efficient distribution systems. I just said you're going to have a drone come in and pick it up, right? And then drop it off. And again, the evolution of business. Well, we start talking about the ag and we all get to the information base, just breaking it down. I'm not going to test you on this. It's just facts. But, in the 1800s, we start talking about the agricultural industry in the United States. It was that's kind of what started us off. Technology like the cotton gin, the ability to do interchangeable parts led to manufacturing, and then we get into factories and things like that. Again, everything's driven by what? Technology. The more technology we bring into it, the more efficient we get, the more productivity we get, and that's how we start to get the evolution of these things, right? We get into manufacturing in the 19th and 20th centuries. We start having more jobs we can bring into the factories and things like that. And then it leads us into the service industry, right? Which is really what the U.S. is these days. We're probably like 80% services right now, right? We start looking at 70%, we're probably around 80% now. Since the mid-'80s, we started becoming more of a service country, right? So I say that because at some point in time, when you do graduate, get out there in the real world and do your thing, you're probably going to be doing some sort of services. You won't be in the factories creating product. You'll be out there doing the sales services or the customer service and stuff like that. So something to think about. More high-paying jobs in the services industry than in the goods producing industry. Okay, so you want to get into the services world. And then last but not least, I like to, now we're in information technology world, right? Combining the services with all the new information technology that's out there. And we've come full circle now. We started off with the ag, right? Back in the 1800s. Now here you have your farmer in his air-conditioned tractor. And look, he can watch his Netflix while he's out there harvesting. Okay, so it's all come full circle with all the technology we have these days. And that is it. We are now done with the VLR 1, talking about Chapter 1. Basic overview of kind of what we're going to get into for the rest of the semester. I will see you on the next VLR soon.